Depending on if I upload this video or not. Trust me, I record a lot more videos than I actually upload. Um, the inspiration for this video, ironically, came from Warhammer 40k. I was watching kind of like a little AMV gaming music video on the Sisters of Battle, and it was titled "Daughters of the Emperor." And instantly, for some goddamn reason, with Ruby, I was just like, Maidens, Ozma, Salem, and then that's where this inspiration, my brain does that. It picks up things, and it's like, how can we change things based on that inspiration to tell the story in Ruby from a different perspective? Because everyone's constantly thinking of rewrites. They're sick of the series having these retcons, or it's messy, or just missed opportunities with how they've created the lore. Because one thing that came up with the Maidens is one of the things I'm most disappointed at is the Maidens have no legacy. And by that, I mean their only point in the story is to be guardians of the doorways in the vaults, and the vault's only 80 years old. The schools have only been around for 80 years max, so there hasn't been many Maidens, has there? And if this, and with the story of the Maidens, it's where it gets more complicated. Is the story about the old man living by himself and he gives the power to four women that just show up for some fucking dumb reason? Is that the story of the Maidens? Or, they showed the backstory of Salem and Ozma, and they had four kids that ironically look like they were themed for the seasons. So that made us scratch our heads like, are the children supposed to be the Maidens? And it's like, they don't clarify on that of, like, I think we need a reminder as to what the canon background of the Maidens actually is. Where is their origin? Because if it is just a man in the friggin' woods who gave his power to four random women, one, I'm personally thinking that Ozma reincarnation is a fucking idiot because he severely weakened himself when he did that. And you gave a ton of power to these kind women, yes. But when you did that, did you program them to be able to pass on the power to the... Like, all the rules that go with being a maiden, did he intentionally program those rules in when he created them? You get it? They don't go into all of this. And these women, like, if he gave them their power, did this happen 80 years ago? Is this the story of the King of Vale? Did this happen before then? If it happened before the war, he just gave immense power to a bunch of random women for no friggin' reason, and then they went out into the world and they can just abuse that power. But then, if he did it during the war, this isn't really a fairy tale, is it? It's 80 years ago. This isn't some, like, when he tells Pyrrha, have you heard of the story of this? And she's like, oh yes, it's one of my favorite. I'm like, is it really a fairy tale? The war, if the maidens were created 80 years ago during the war to be the keepers of the vaults, they're not that old. They don't warrant a fairy tale. That's where I get the stories messed up. And that's what I mean. It's got no legacy. The maidens don't feel like this huge force that's driving the plot. It's just like, oh, we'll show up, we'll open the door, we'll fight over opening the door, and then we fucking disappear because we're too powerful to stay in the story for too long. Cinder just gets her ass kicked by Ruby because of Silver Eyes, but Amber Pyrrha shit is gone. That's dead. Raven came in, disappeared. Doesn't matter to the plot anymore. Penny's a maiden. I'm guessing she's gonna die after Atlas. My point is, whenever a maiden's around, they're just door keys. There's no emotional investment behind them. There's no legacy. There's no empire behind them. You know that feeling you get with Oscar with Ozpin, and then you learn about all the reincarnations all the way going back to Ozma. That feels heavy because what happens to Oscar, and they're handling his character development really poorly, should feel heavy. Like there should be moments where Oscar's like just like maybe he spaces out, and when he comes to, he's just like he's absorbed more information of the past, like he's unlocking more of it, and all these different personalities. He's feeling as if he's lived that life, and it's stuffing up his perception of who he was originally because he has to adapt to all this information. And I feel like that's something that could have been applied to the Maidens. But in my aspect, and this is where we're going to get into this idea that I came up with, inspired by this Daughters of the Emperor, is we go ahead and we make the four daughters of Ozma and Salem the Maidens. And to me, this makes a lot of sense, and you don't really have to explain the fact that they reincarnate, because, hello, Ozma, their father, reincarnates. This could have been some sort of magical genetic trait that was passed down to his four daughters. And from there, you can have the maiden powers. They go back as long as Ozma does now. It could be thousands of years. The maidens have always been around. They're always reincarnating. And it could be that, you know, how they pick the next female maiden? That could have been something Ozma changed. Over the course of his reincarnations, maybe he's encountered his daughter's reincarnations, the maidens, and he's kind of tweaked their magic by giving them a bit more. He's given them a bit more to change how they reincarnate so they have some form of control over their reincarnation because he doesn't. And the reason I'm going so in depth with this, if it makes the maidens of today feel more heavy in character because they would have the personality, well, not the personalities, they have all the memories of their previous reincarnations going all the way back to Ozma and Salem's children. And just think, this was where I was going with all this. Out of all the friggin' maidens, I specifically focused in on Raven. Now, how they've handled her in the story is she killed another maiden for the powers. I wouldn't go that route. I would make Raven the maiden of the Beacon Relic. Yeah, that's the whole thing with, you know, Pyrrha and everything. Get rid of the whole Pyrrha becoming a maiden story. Raven is a rogue maiden. And the basic reading for this is she already didn't trust Ozpin. But imagine out of Team Stark, which is Ozpin's like personal Illuminati group that he absorbed. He's like he had to choose between Summer or Raven to become the maiden. He trusted them to the most, right? But he's like, I don't want to create a silver-eyed maiden. He goes, that's too much power for one person. So he goes, we're going to keep you the silver-eyed warrior, and we'll make Raven the maiden. And although Ozpin could have explained some of what she would experience as a maiden, he doesn't explain everything. Raven goes through the process of becoming the next maiden. You know, maybe the maiden before is in a similar situation to the one in Atlas and is just passing away, and she passes the powers onto Raven. And the moment Raven gets it, over the course of a few missions, leading up to, you know how Summer supposedly died? So like leading up, the more and more information and memories that Raven's unlocking through her previous reincarnations, she figures it out. She's like, she turns around to Ozpin and she's like, you were our father once. You're the reason we died. You and Salem killed us. And it's like when Raven's already pissed off enough with Ozpin, but now she finds that out, and she becomes this rogue maiden. And it's like at some point maybe she gets approached by like Salem's team, or even maybe Salem herself, and she's just like, I want nothing to do with you either. Like, like she's still Raven, but because she has all these memories and feelings of being the daughter of him, she's like she doesn't trust her as like the mother figure or the father figure, and she's just like fuck you both. That makes more sense with Raven's character, and all of a sudden the maidens, like like I said, they are the daughters of this like emperor, this immortal being, and I just think it would be a really cool idea if Salem and Ozma's spirit throughout all the time are not only fighting for control of the relics, but are fighting for control of their daughters again and again. And with every reincarnation, their daughters are growing. They're just like absorbing more information because new people come along. I'm not saying that they are just their daughters. That's just a personality from the past. But it's just like more and more people are adding on reasons why they dislike them. And with that, the four maidens all of a sudden can have different personalities how they interact. Like the Raven Maiden, based on the daughter that was, might have something against one of the other maidens. Like she's supposed to be the Fall Maiden, right? In my rewrite, right, Raven, because that's what Cinder is. She's the Fall Maiden. Um, she could have something against the Winter Maiden, just something stupid from their childhood, and then maybe in a previous reincarnation in the past, they just didn't see eye to eye. Or maybe one of the other maidens at one point in the past fucked up big with Salem or some shit. It could be something like that that affects how the maidens today even view each other. Rather than just being random people with awesome magical abilities, they have personal grudges against each other from the past. And I just feel like this would add so much more, and you wouldn't write off the characters either. You wouldn't write off the characters, and it would be like, it would give some more depth to also Crow and Raven, because at the moment it's like, oh, fuck you cunt, and that's it. It's like they're angry at each other. Oh, you stayed with Ozpin, and I'm like, big yeah, and why? Like, why? We're waiting for you to dive into that. I'm like, if Raven was the maiden and she had all these fucking memories, and like at first, if she's just being her typical self and being like moaning and bitching and being like, fuck it, I'm going, and she goes rogue, and Crow stays right. Imagine Crow present day when we get to like volume 6, instead of him learning off Jin all this shit about the past. Imagine if it was Raven. Raven sits down with Crow and it's just like all these memories. He's fucked up his daughter's lives. He's fucked up so many other people's lives. This is a man that everyone looks up to, but he just never learns. And she goes, Salem is the same shit. Just another powerful being that just doesn't learn. She goes, instead of taking sides in this war, why don't the rest of humanity and the rest of the foreigners, why don't we say fuck both of them and we, create this third faction that looks out for itself? And I thought that could be a lot more interesting. It's like you got Ozma and, his Illuminati, you got Salem and her group, and then you got these rogue maidens that are just like, nah, we're not falling for this shit again. And if you're figuring what could be the big thing that would turn the maidens against both sides, I would put it down to the war 80 years ago. It was supposedly fought over Faunus right, and as we know, Salem is a manipulator, so I'm guessing the war would have started as well through Salem's manipulation of mankind, and eventually they, through little pinches here and there, they start fighting each other. And it's just the maidens are like, yep, Salem caused that war, which engulfed the whole planet, but they're also pissed off at the King of Vale, Ozpin Ozma, because they're like, you couldn't win the war. You were losing. The war was about to kill everyone, and you used the relics because you got the choice, the crown of choice, the sword of destruction and shit. You used the relics to overpower humanity. The mistake that you made with Salem all the way in the past, where you posed as gods, that was your only solution to ending the war 80 years ago. You took powerful relics, you whooped everyone's ass, and you posed as a god to force peace on the world. And now, modern day Ruby, that peace is breaking apart because there is no tyrant anymore in charge. So she's just all the maidens in present day. None of them are allied with any of the schools. All of them have gone rogue and are just like living their lives by themselves because they're like Salem just keeps creating conflict. Ozma doesn't know how to fucking solve it, and that all the maidens would just be sick of it. What's weird is I only thought up half of this after starting this video. The last few bits I just added, I'm making up as I go. This is shit you can think up. This is why this show is a great concept that's just poorly executed because there's so many amazing ways you could go with this shit. And then we got what we got, where fucking maidens just disappear because we can't write them into the story. Yeah, as I said in the beginning, I don't know how the maidens work even in the show themselves. Were they created 80 years ago? Were they created ages ago? Are they the children? None of that's established, and I thought this would be just a mad-ass idea on how to bring certain other characters into the story, certain things. I don't know, like, and I think one thing that needs to come out is, I think, out of all things, Ty or Raven, not Ty, not Ty. I'm not gonna say Ty. Crow or Raven should be the ones who know how Summer died. One of them should know. I reckon that would have been an excellent plot twist. Like, if the reason, like Rogue, where Raven pissed off in the end is like she realized it's just like something about how Summer died with Salem and how it attaches back to Ozma, that could have played a factor in it. At this point, I'm just like, I've said this to a lot of people, I don't care. The whole story, the lore, the characters, it's so messy, it's hard to stay invested. To me now, it's weird. The show's driven me to be kind of like Team Salem, and the only reason I'm Team Salem is I want her to destroy Remnant. Kill everyone. Fuck this show. Let the show end with everyone dead. Because I have no emotional connection to any of the characters in the fucking show. I don't feel anything for them. And I feel like that's a very, very bad thing. So that's just a random idea I had for the maidens. Like, I was talking to my friends on friggin' Amino and Discord, literally maybe half an hour before I watched this AMV, and then straight away I'm just like, you know what? Pick up your phone. We're gonna record this, and we'll make it up as we go. And that's what you're watching now. It's just an idea thought up on the spot.